G'day listeners, readers and lovers of learning. Ollie Lovell here. And I wanted to make a quick video for you today because we're at a very exciting time. We're at the cusp of the release of my second book, Tools for Teachers, the book that brings together insights and takeaways from the first 5 years of the Education Research Reading Room podcast. So at this moment, I was really excited because we're going through the copy editing process right now, and I thought I'd really love to give subscribers to the mailing list, listeners to the podcast, and readers of the blog a bit of a sneak peek into the book Tools for Teachers, and also at the same time hopefully share 3 bits of real value for you today. So let's jump into a bit of a sneak peek and 3 takeaways from Tools for Teachers. So there it is, the cover of Tools for Teachers. And before we jump into 3 takeaways, I did just want to give you a bit of an introduction to what's in the book and also the structure of the book as well. So if we look at what's within Tools for Teachers, there's 8 chapters under 3 headings. Now you'll see the subheading of this book is How to Teach, Lead and Learn Like the World's Best Educators. And so they're the 3 sections of this book. The first section, part 1, is Teach. Chapter 1 is on explicit instruction, Chapter 2 behavior management, 3 is motivation, and 4 is regulation and relationships. And the structure of this, basically I really wanted to start the book with the highest value content for the practicing teacher as possible. So the idea with these 4 chapters is, number 1, if you do high quality explicit instruction, the vast majority of the students in your class are going to be engaged and are going to be having a lot of success. If you're struggling with that a little bit, or there are a few students still left behind, behavior management, the tactics and techniques within that chapter are really going to help you. For the students for whom your standard behavior management techniques and your explicit instruction of a high quality isn't quite working, we need to move into the work of writers and podcast guests such as Harry Fletcher Wood and Peps McRae to learn about motivation. And when that's really not working as well, when all of the techniques for motivation aren't working, we need to understand at a more fundamental level what might be going on for the young people we're dealing with. And that's when we look into regulation and relationships. So that's Teach, summarizing all of the key ideas that I could fit in from the first 5 years of the ERRR podcast. The next session is on Lead. Leading starts with having a real clear idea of the purpose of the school that you're trying to lead or the department that you're trying to lead. And a lot of these ideas transfer over to the classroom as well. After we've identified the purpose, we're able to set the curriculum, because the curriculum in a lot of ways is really the instantiation or the representation of the purpose of the school in the day-to-day experience of our students. And following that, we look at leadership. I introduced the 3 M's of leadership. One of them you'll see a little bit more about within one of the takeaways today. And really it's a framework for leadership, for getting your head around leadership. That's hopefully going to help you to lead more effectively. And the final section is about Learn. There's only 1 chapter in the Learn section, but that's about reading and evaluating education research. And so we're going to take actually a takeaway from each of these 3 parts today. But just before that, I did want to share one feature of the book that I'm particularly excited about. And this is about the chapter structure, but more specifically, something that's going to come at the start and the end of each chapter. My work on cognitive load theory has shown me that one of the most valuable things that a teacher can do, or someone instructing others can do, is to help them see how all the pieces of a puzzle fit together. And so that's something that I've really tried my best to do whilst I wrote Tools for Teacher. So at the start of every chapter, you will see a chapter beginning concept map that will look something like this. This is the one from the first chapter, explicit instruction. And what this means is that as you read through the chapter, sometimes when you're reading a book, you kind of lose how the ideas are connected, how they all fit together, or where you are in the chapter and how the ideas link. With this chapter map, you can just flick back to the start of the chapter and see exactly how the ideas that you're encountering fit into the bigger picture. This is a skeleton, and this comes at the start of each chapter. At the end of each chapter, once you've encountered all the ideas that are kind of fitting underneath these main ideas, there is another chapter map, and that is a more detailed one. So for example, for the explicit instruction one, that looks like this. And this has the same original structure. So if we have a look here, we've got explicit instruction can be summarized with a PIC model, plan, instruct, check for understanding. It's the same here. Explicit instruction can be summarized with a PIC model, plan, instruct, and check for understanding. But it also includes many more ideas from the chapter to really help you see in detail how it all fits together and build a really coherent, structured, and effective and efficient mental model for your teaching, your leadership, and your learning. So that was just an exciting structural thing that I wanted to mention. We can now jump into 3 takeaways. Takeaway 1 that I wanted to share from the teach section is a bit of a framework for thinking about how to check for understanding. And this is drawn in many ways from the work of Doug Lemov. So you can see here, I've said the data collection phase of the check for understanding includes questioning and observation. And following that, we need to do feedback and adaptation of instruction. So you'll see, I'll provide you with a link to download a copy of these slides, as well as actual segments or excerpts from the book. So here you can see check for understanding. Here's the framework for check for understanding, how all the pieces fit together, and then a few brief insights into some of the techniques that fit within just the first part of here, reject, self-report. The next takeaway comes from the lead section. Manage change by engaging theories of action. That's one of the M's, manage. And this was one of my favorite, this insight comes from one of my favorite interviews, and that was with Vivian Robinson. So in this section, we talk about how in the mindset above, I've suggested sustainable change only comes through engaging with theories of action. Without teachers changing their beliefs that drive their current behaviors, any behavior change established will only ever result in short-term compliance. So this really relates to the spectrum that we can think about of leadership. When we lead someone, are we getting them to just comply, or are we getting them to really commit? And this whole section of the book is focused on helping you get to that commitment through engaging people's series of action. So we can have a look here. Just down here, I've actually included a script from the podcast that gives you a really clear view of how to manage change by engaging theories of action, which is a 3-step process. First step is to agree on the problem to be solved. Then you need to agree on design criteria for the solution, and then you need to agree upon standards of evidence. I think you'll really enjoy this excerpt. And Tom Sherrington, who is one of the proofreaders of this book and who actually wrote the foreword for it, this was one of his favorite bits. And the final takeaway in relation to learn, above all, search for mechanisms. And this is one that long-term listeners of the podcast will have heard me say a lot. So if there were one main learning from the last 5 years of running the podcast, it would be this: understanding mechanisms is a key to improving teaching and learning. And so we can jump down here, and I've included this bit. One of my favorite tables from the book is contrasting a recipe-based understanding with a mechanism-based understanding, and showing how that can lead into lethal mutations in comparison to effective adaptation. I think you'll really enjoy this section of the book as well. So that was it, listeners and readers and watchers. 3 takeaways from Tools for Teachers. I hope this was valuable for you, or at least piqued your interest a little bit, got you a bit interested. And I hope also that, more importantly, these 3 excerpts that I've shared that were kind of at a point of the copy editing process that John Catt was happy for me to share, I hope that you find them valuable. Thanks for your time today, and until next time, keep learning.